AM 1460, the new WXBR. You were listening to the Metro South Morning Show. Peter Czymbor here with you on this Monday morning. This Saturday, live from Vegas and on pay-per-view, it is UFC 168, featuring the main event of the middleweight championship bout between Chris Weidman and Anderson Silva. And here to chat with us about this event and more, we welcome back to the program Dana White. Dana, thanks for coming back on the show.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Dana, it's still bizarre from a fan's perspective to take a look at the poster and the lineup for UFC 168 and to see Anderson Silva in the B-side challengers bracket in the main event of a title fight on a UFC show.
Right. No, I hear you, man. Let me tell you what. 13 years I've been involved in this sport. There hasn't been a fight that I've been more excited to see. I can't wait to see this fight. From the minute that fight ended, I wanted to see the rematch, and now we're finally here.
Now, I know you heard these, I guess we'll call them criticisms from fans prior to the first fight between Silva and Weidman, but there was promotional material that the UFC put out there featuring a lot of members of the UFC roster picking Weidman to win over Silva. And at the time, I think a lot of people thought that you guys were just trying to do that as a promotional tool to deem Weidman a worthy challenger against Anderson Silva, who had this aura of invincibility around him. Now heading into the second fight, what is the feeling amongst the fighters on your roster? Do they think Silva will be able to regroup? Do they think he'll be able to adjust? Or is this one of those cases where the guy who won the first fight will win the second fight more convincingly?
Yeah, I think the people who thought he would win the first time still think he will win the second time. And I'm sure more people believe now that they saw the first fight. But not the people in Vegas. Weidman is still the underdog. And one of the things that I really respect about Weidman is a lot of guys will go out there to be like, getting defensive and say, didn't you see that first fight? You saw what I did, right? Not him. You know what he's saying? He's saying, I knew this was going to happen. That's why I said, because there's never been anybody more confident going into a fight that they were going to beat Anderson Silva than Chris Weidman was. Because he told me, not only will I beat him, I will give you an immediate rematch after I do. And he's basically like, I knew when I beat him, I'd have to beat him again for people to believe what they saw.
It was as stunning of an upset as you'll see in combat sports. The only thing that comes to mind within, say, the past 10 years is when Antonio Tarver knocked out Roy Jones about 10 years ago, when Roy Jones kind of had that aura of invincibility around him. Do you think?
Or when Tyson got knocked out. I'll never forget where I was when Tyson got knocked out because I never thought it was possible and never thought it was going to happen.
That's probably a better example. I was just a little tyke at the time, but I'll take your word for it, Dana. Now, do you think that Anderson Silva underestimated Weidman in the first fight, or do you think that it was just one of those situations where we get caught with his hands down?
Well, here's what he said. He's been saying that, the reason it happened to him was because his foot was in the wrong place. And that's really pissing off Weidman. And Weidman's been saying stuff like, you could put your foot wherever you want it in this next fight, and we're going to get the same result. So, I mean, just this kid is so confident, it's unbelievable.
Well, the main event is Chris Weidman taking on Anderson Silva for the middleweight championship this Saturday on pay-per-view, UFC 168. As is normally the case with UFC cards, you guys stack the undercard with some meaningful and worthy bouts, including Ronda Rousey's return against Miesha Tate. These two girls don't like each other, Dana.
No, they do not. They do not like each other at all, and they had to spend 5 weeks together on the set of The Ultimate Fighter, which made them not like each other even more. Ronda Rousey, not only is Ronda Rousey the first ever UFC women's champion, but she just broke onto the pound-for-pound list now. She's the number 10 pound-for-pound best fighter in the world. Pretty strong. And Miesha Tate, Ronda says this to her all the time, but Ronda says it to be mean, but it's true. Miesha Tate wants everything that Ronda has, and she's going to have the opportunity to take it on Saturday night.
When you take a look back at UFC history, even prior to the time you owned the company, what is the best grudge match, in your opinion, between two characters that just did not get along and made for great fights against one another, and if not great fights against each other, a great build-up and animosity leading to the fight?
Well, I can tell you what, a lot of the grudge matches where guys say, I'm going to do this to him, usually end up not being that way. You know what I mean? But one of the biggest grudge matches where there was just a ton of smack talk was when BJ Penn fought George St. Pierre, and we did this. We did a UFC primetime on it, and the show was just awesome. And that fight actually lived up to the hype. But usually, when there's a ton of smack talk, the fights aren't that great.
And I know that these are not two of your favorite people in the world, but I must say that what first got me hooked into UFC was that third season of The Ultimate Fighter, where the coaches were Tito Ortiz and Ken Shamrock. And I'll tell you right now, I'd followed UFC enough to know that when they ultimately fought, and they fought twice more after that fight, that Tito was going to kick his ass and get rid of him within one round. It didn't matter. I still wanted to see it based on the animosity between the two.
No, it's true. It's true. Hey, as human beings, there's nothing we love more than two people who just can't wait to get in there and go at it.
Once again, we're chatting with UFC President Dana White here on AM 1460, the new WXBR UFC 168 this Saturday. Dana, I alluded to Roy Jones losing to Antonio Tarver about a decade ago being the closest thing that I've seen within the past decade, resembling Anderson Silva's upset loss to Chris Weidman a few months back in the UFC. There has been talk, and you know about this, that Anderson Silva wants to box Roy Jones. You were quoted somewhere as to saying you would consider it if Anderson Silva is to win this Saturday night. Why would you consider that?
Here's the problem, okay? First of all, if Anderson Silva regains the title on Saturday night and becomes the champion again, I'm going to have to deal with his issues and what he wants to do. Number two, Roy Jones Jr. has been, a good friend to me. When I was 19 years old, nobody knew who the hell I was. I met Roy Jones Jr. in Boston when he was there for the promoting the James Toney fight, and he's always been a good dude to me. So I got to hear him out. I got to get in the middle of this thing and see what these guys want to do. Whether on Saturday night, if Chris Weidman wins or Anderson Silva wins, the next massive, huge fight that everybody wants to see is Vitor Belfort. That's what everybody wants to see. So I'm going to have to figure out what happens with this Roy Jones thing.
And I want to talk to you about the Roy Jones thing for a moment here, because I have this theory, and you can feel free to disagree with me if you'd like. I think that 99 times out of 100 in an MMA fight at the world-class level, a world-class boxer will lose to a world-class MMA fighter. There's always that chance that a boxer catches the guy coming in first, and that's all she wrote. Ray Mercer versus Tim Sylvia comes to mind. I think nearly 100 times out of 100 in an MMA fight or in a boxing match at the world-class level, the world-class boxer would beat the MMA fighter in a pure boxing matchup. Why put Anderson Silva in the predicament where he's against a faded Roy Jones, who maybe not as world-class anymore, respectively, in comparison to where he once was, but it still doesn't seem like a very advantageous position for Silva to be in?
I agree with you 1,000,000%. There is one thing that you said that I don't disagree with. I have to deal with these lunatics. You know what I'm saying? This guy got it in his head that they want to box, and Roy wants to box him, so I got to deal with these guys and try to figure out what we're going to do here.
So you've got to keep everyone happy. It's not an enviable position to be in, but I'm sure the paychecks aren't bad.
Which is an impossible job. Yes, that's my job, is to keep everybody happy.
Once again, we're chatting with UFC President Dana White here on WXBR. You said the fight that MMA fans want to see, should Anderson Silva win this Saturday against Chris Weidman, would be him against his compatriot Vitor Belfort. If Weidman wins, is Belfort still in the title picture?
Absolutely, yeah. No matter who wins, if Weidman wins or if Silva wins, Vitor Belfort's next.
Belfort seems like a guy with 9 lives. Dana, I know that you are limited on your time this morning. What else on the undercard should fans look forward to this Saturday night from Vegas?
Oh, God, the undercard's awesome. I mean, Josh Barnett and Travis Brown are fighting. Live and free on Fox Sports 1. Before we even get the pay-per-view, you can watch these fights for free on Fox Sports 1. The main event of that card is Chris Lieben and Uriah Hall. And the list goes on and on. Johnson's fighting Tebow. Dennis Siver's on the undercard versus Manny Gambarian. Those are all live and free on Fox Sports 1 before we even get to the main card on pay-per-view.
When you take a look at what boxing has done in, say, the past year or two, where they've actually put more title fights and more significant fights on their pay-per-view undercards, and Showtime Extreme is now showing prelims before the regular Showtime fights come on, do you sort of say, pat yourself on the back and take some credit for that?
Yeah, I see a lot of the things that boxing are doing, and they're definitely copying a lot of things that we do. But you know what? That's good. We raised the bar for everybody. Everybody, if the fans should be thrilled that because we started doing it, it was successful. Now everybody's doing it, and people are getting better free fights.
Well, you guys took what worked from their business model and what didn't work, adhered it to MMA, and now they're reciprocating. That's Dana White joining us here on WXBR. Dana, any final words before I let you go?
Happy holidays, everybody, and thanks for the support.
You're listening to the Metro South Morning Show, PM and the AM. We'll step aside for a quick break. Back with more after this.